I made my video on the state of Lumix for Micro Four Thirds a little bit ago, so I'm going to do the same for Lumix full frame now. So what are my expectations for Lumix full frame? Frankly, S1H2. I don't really expect anything beyond that, so let's get into it. So I'm going to be realistic in my expectations for the S1H2. I don't think it's going to have a fully stacked or global sensor. Lumix doesn't make their own sensor, so they have to buy stuff from Sony. A little boring, but they're going to use the same sensor as the S1II, the 24 megapixel partially stacked sensor. They've already got a lot of R&D on that sensor already, so they're just going to stick with it. But of course, they're going to offer more with it in S1H2. Mainly, spec-wise, OpenGate internal RAW. So OpenGate was Lumix's feature, signature feature for a while. And then Canon all of a sudden offered OpenGate as well. But they did it in internal RAW. So in one sense, you can say Canon kind of just leaped ahead of Lumix, except Lumix still does have OpenGate 60, which Canon does not. So I guess you can say they're kind of neck and neck, but Lumix needs to take that title back and needs to offer OpenGate in RAW, internal RAW, whether it be OpenGate 24 or OpenGate 60. Lumix needs to do that in RAW for their S1H2. And then they also need to put an OLPF filter in there, because you hear it all the time from the old users of the S1H how much they love that OLPF filter and how modern Lumix cameras are just too sharp. S1H2 is going to need that OLPF filter in there, but there's not going to be a built-in ND filter in there. I just do not expect at all that you're going to have an ND filter in here, unfortunately. All right, so memory solution, boring again, but CF Express Type B and SD card combo. That's just the way it is, apparently. It's actually not that bad having an SD card slot because memory cards are so darn expensive now. Another thing that people don't talk enough about is how Lumix's H.265 OpenGate, they can record that onto SD cards. No one talks about that, but it's just a very, very efficient OpenGate codec Lumix has that no one else has right now. If you get OpenGate on Blackmagic, it's going to be internal RAW. But the fact that Lumix can do OpenGate and 265 onto like V30 SD cards is such an underrated feature. Let's go on. Audio. This is going to bum a lot of people out, but I think it's still going to be 32-bit external. Because now we're talking at a business perspective. If Lumix were to do 32-bit internal, they'd kind of discourage customers from buying their external recorder. And that's just not a good business move. It's good for the consumer, but for the business, it's not good. You're gonna say, oh, our new camera does 32-bit internal, so you discourage sales of their 32-bit external recorder. It's my expectations is that 32-bit audio will still require an external recorder. And body style, I expect it to be similar to the FX2 or FX3. Simply put, that's kind of the standard now. I think Lumix is just going to take notes from that and make something that looks similar to an FX3. The same way the C50 looks similar to an FX3. The main thing is that you have to not have any overheating or thermal issues with the new body. The S1II, S1R2, those bodies have pretty much shown the limitations of thermal management with Lumix's new cameras. You don't want to rely on those cameras for like long-term recording in the highest resolutions and frame rates and codecs. Lumix's new body for their S1H2 will have to be able to do, their highest video resolutions, codecs, and frame rates without worrying about overheating. That is the main goal of their new body, and you cannot use the same body from the S1II and S1R2. Price-wise, originally I thought, you can make it around $3,500, but with the Canon R6V at $2,500, I think that really puts a lot of pressure on Lumix. They can't price this $1,000 more than the Canon R6V when that camera will have a lot of the same resolutions and frame rates and codecs as the S1H2. You just can't price yourself that much higher than the Canon R6V. So I think they need to do like $3,000 or maybe $3,100 or $3,200. Same price as the S1Hii and the S1R2 when they first came out. They're gonna need to keep it around that same price point. Another thing is the interface. Lumix, you need to remove a lot of just all the photo features. You know, you gotta let the consumer know this is just for video. This is not a photography camera. Lumix menus, there's just so many things you can do. It gets overwhelming even for experienced shooters. They really need to pare down their menus and really focus on just video and get all that photography stuff out the way. All right, so those are my expectations. Not exciting, like I said, it's not exciting. I'm a little pessimistic and I just don't think there's gonna be anything that really blows people away on paper. But the main purpose is that the S1H2 is gonna be just a beefed up S1 II that has like no reliability issues when it comes to recording video. Right, so here's some hopes. Some things that I hope they have, but I'm doubtful they'll have these. The one thing that Lumix can really do that will really make people's eyes pop is if they were able to get Blackmagic RAW internal. At the moment, the only cameras that can do a Blackmagic RAW internal are Blackmagic cameras. If Lumix can somehow work out a deal with Blackmagic to get RAW internal in their camera, that would be, I don't know if it's a game changer, but it will be very, very significant. I don't think it's too far off the map to believe that, simply because Blackmagic is in the L-mount alliance. So there kind of is a camaraderie there that both Lumix and Blackmagic are in the same L-mount alliance. If you were to ask Sony, Canon, Nikon, or Lumix, who's got the best chance at getting Blackmagic RAW internal, I'd go with Lumix just because L-mount alliance. All right, another thing is doubtful of this, but the design of the body. While I think it will take a lot of cues from the FX2, FX3, I think if they could kind of mix in the aesthetic of an older Lumix camera, specifically, this might be a bit odd decision, but the Lumix DMC L1. So this was Lumix's first DSLR camera. It was a chunky body, and it was like just this like rectangular body. It just has this aesthetic that I really like. It screams Lumix. I'm not going to use any AI mock-ups to, you know, create a combination of the two. Just use your imagination. I don't want to use AI. The Lumix DMC L1, a cross between that camera and, you know, the Sony FX3. So think of it as a blending of Lumix's heritage, their aesthetic, along with, you know, the modern design of an FX camera. I think that'd be a really neat design. Those two are my hopes, you know, just Blackmagic RAW internal and give your design the aesthetics of the first Lumix DSLR camera, the L1. That'd be really cool if they could do that. So my expectations are realistic, as I said. Not exciting. You're not going to get any insane global or fully stacked sensor in there. No internal NDs, unfortunately. You just have to go off the trend. At the moment, there's no FX3 styled cinema camera that has internal NDs. So S1H2, I'm very doubtful it'll have internal NDs. Those are my expectations. A few extra thoughts. An S5 Mark III, I think that'll be next year. An S9 Mark II will probably also be next year. I just don't see Lumix bunching in all these full frame cameras into 1 year. It's just, they're gonna be too much swaying attention in one direction and then the other and then the other. They don't want to dilute their S1H2 attention by saying, oh, S5 Mark III, oh, S9 Mark II. S5 Mark III, S9 Mark II, I think will come next year. There you have it. Those are thoughts, expectations, and hopes. So, you know, what do you think? Do you think off on my expectations? Do you expect them to do more? Do the things I'm saying kind of underwhelm you? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time, okay? Peace out.